Breaking news! A new episode of Let's Be Frank starting now!
Hello all! Welcome everybody to the next installment of Weird and Wild Creatures. I have lost count at this point to which one we're on. We're somewhere in the 20s. I'm excited today because we're getting back to basics like I love to do, and we're just talking about 7 completely random creatures. I handpicked them from my collection for you guys, so let us not delay and let's talk about some truly insane beasts from the monsters of the past. Our dinosaur today is more of an old lizard, and that's the lystrosaurus. This is a plant eater. Now, he may not look like it with those tusks, those big giant fangs of his, but I promise he did not eat meat. Lystrosaurus spent its days roaming around, eating vegetables on its 5th pound on the ground. The fangs were just to ward off predators, and if it got into a spat, it could sink those fangs into the other Lystrosaurus, or I don't know if 2 Lystrosaurus were going to fight each other, but let's just say a predator. It shows up, it attacks Lystrosaurus, boom, fangs sink in, dead, it can go back to eating its plants. You get it? So the card says that this guy was about 3.3 feet long and like 1.5 feet tall. It also describes Lystrosaurus as being like the size of a big dog, but 1.5 feet, that's not all that big. That's kind of a small dog, if you ask me. So as I mentioned in the beginning, Lystrosaurus is not technically a dinosaur. It's just a monster of the past, you know? It doesn't have to be a dinosaur. It's a big lizard. Supposedly, Lystrosaurus was around before dinosaurs even came into the picture. So, one more fun fact about this guy. It has the nickname shovel lizard because it would use its like beak-like thing to dig up plants from under the ocean bed and toss them out onto land for eating later. Isn't that cute? But I think we've exhausted pretty much everything we can say about this cute little pet-sized lizard. Let's go ahead and move on now to the nightmares of nature. And today we'll be talking about the Wolverine. This is one of nature's most feared animals, and it's not even that big. Getting up to only 4 feet long and weighing about 70 pounds, the Wolverine could fit comfortably in my arms, and I could cuddle it, except it would definitely kill me. Wolverines are known for taking down prey much larger than them, moose included. You guys know how big a moose is, right? I think a lot of us underestimate how big a moose is. A moose is like 8 feet tall, and that's not even counting antlers. Moose are huge. If a Wolverine can take down a moose, I think I don't stand a chance. The card even says, when it gets down to the what they eat section, that a Wolverine will eat anything it can catch. And also carrion and fruits. But anything it can catch. Chipmunks, rabbits, bears? Could this thing hunt a bear? I don't know who would win in a fight, but if the Wolverine got the upper hand, I would not be surprised. I mean, it may look cute, but the card even says, after I flipped it around, that even bears will run away if they hear the snarls and growls of the Wolverine. Like, come on, we were just talking about that. That's absurd. Native Americans feared this thing so much, they even called it the Evil One. That's hilarious. Imagine how much of a menace you have to be called the Evil One out of all the creatures on the planet. Now, this thing is technically a weasel, just like the skunk. They're actually cousins, the skunk and the Wolverine. And similarly to a skunk, the Wolverine can like spray its anal glands to mark its territory. And I hear the smell is almost as bad as a skunk's. Ugh. Yeah, honestly, this card's kind of bare on information. I've given you guys practically everything. This has the least amount of text I think I've ever seen in a Weird and Wild Creatures card. So with that being said, we're done talking about the Wolverine. And we're going to move on next to the toxic terrors. Today's toxic terror is the harvester ant. Small, tiny little guy. The card says he's like half an inch long, which, I mean, that's a decent sized ant. You think of ants a lot of times, you think like, what, like a quarter of an inch? Half an inch long ant ain't bad. It's a bit of a tongue twister. So the card refers to harvester ants as the farmers of the insect kingdom. And they spend most of their day just finding seeds and hauling them back to the nest. So, you know, they cultivate more so than they hunt. I guess, do any ants go off hunting? I guess they can look for other insects, but nope, harvester ants prefer to be gatherers instead of hunters. Like most insects, harvester ants don't live a long time. Average lifespan is a few months, unless you're the queen, in which you can live up to 30 years. That is a long time for an ant to live. A lot of humans can't even make it past 30 years. You know, if you look throughout history, 30 years for a queen harvester ant is such a long time. So these things are obviously extremely small, but don't count them out just yet. When a harvester ant stings its, I'm not going to say prey, but when it stings a creature, its stinger is actually barbs. When it pulls its stinger out of the creature's skin, it has some extra pain and scraping along the way. And harvester ants can actually inject so much venom that if enough harvester ants gathered onto some small mammals, it could kill them. Now we all know that enough ant stings, leads to death. But these guys, it's not going to take them covering every square inch of you to kill you. If we actually flip this card around, I don't know if I'd be blocking it, but you might be able to see down here that the ants are like killing a cow. And there's not like one ant per square centimeter of this cow or anything. There's just a few on him, and they're already bringing him down. And of course, by a few, I mean like 100. But it's not taking thousands of ants. You guys know how big a cow is, right? One little fun fact before we go. Sometimes, and this is the first time ever hearing of ants doing this, they will find a pebble, a decent-sized pebble, and put it on the top of their nest, over that little hole, the entrance door. And as the sun heats up the little pebble, it will in turn heat up the nest, keeping it extra warm. So not only does it act as like a door to keep other predators out and whatnot, but it's a nice heating solution. Let's go ahead and leave the ants behind and talk about the monsters of the deep. You know, I didn't do this on purpose, but we haven't really been talking about a lot of super scary creatures today. The Wolverine was the only one that was deathly terrifying. And we're going to continue that trend by talking about the giant red mysid. So these shrimp are indeed a lot bigger than you think they are. They can get up to a foot long. That's a big shrimp. I would love to have foot-long shrimp at any buffet I go to. But that's just the maximum. Typically, they kind of stay in the realm of 4 inches, which for a shrimp still is pretty big. So these guys don't just live in coral reefs or anything. No. They live 3,000 feet below the surface of the ocean, where it's pitch dark. And to survive, to stay away from predators, they'll spray this blue fluorescent, what do you want to call it? Just some sort of liquid at any predator coming its way to fend them off. So this is one of the first ever times that when I look at the lifespan section of these facts, it says unknown. Scientists do not know how long these shrimp live. They have not been observed long enough to see them go from living to dead completely naturally. Which means, in my mind, these things are eternal. They will not die. So on the card, I'm sure one of the first things you notice are those giant red antennae that come off the front of its head. And I'm going to butcher the words. Let me just try to read it straight off the card. They are studded with tiny hairs called setae, S-E-T-A-E. Setae. We're just gonna call them setae. And those setae act as motion detectors so it can see if any predators are swimming around it. And they also act as taste buds, oddly enough, so it can taste the water for any lingering bits of food. So I'm sure a lot of you were thinking, well, if it's bright glowing red, how is it gonna hide from any of these predators when it's pitch black down there? Well, when you get down to depths that deep, really the only light that makes it down there is blue light. So, seeing blue is very easy for all these deep sea dwellers. They can't see red though. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that weird? You get deep enough, you can't see red. So this guy completely blends into the background, and you will never see this mysid ever again. Oh, this poor guy. Because it's too dark to see down there, and like I mentioned earlier, the mysid can rely on its antennas, in the motion detector setae in them. Everything this guy sees is gonna be blurry. Because, a clear picture will never be formed of what's going on in front of him. He'll never know what it's like to see with 20/20 vision. I feel so bad for these giant shrimp. But not bad enough to where we can't move on. Up next is the tiny terrors. We have another creature that's not necessarily deadly or terrifying, but is definitely annoying. And that's the horsefly. Ugh. So for being a part of the tiny terrors, the horsefly is actually a pretty decent size. They're I'd say they're this big. They have an actual size thing on the card. Of course it means nothing when it's this big behind me, but now the males, they stick to plant juices for the most part. They don't need to suck the blood. The females, when it comes time to lay their eggs, they need a bit more nutrition, a bit more sustenance. They're going to be out for blood. And they're going to look for all these herd animals like cows and horses and sheep, things that are close together they can get to easily. So horsefly larvae grow up in very muddy areas, and they're going to feed on insects while they're growing up. And if there's more larvae around than there is other insects, other prey, these larvae will just eat each other. They don't care. They don't have brains like we do. Morality, what's that? Ugh. Also, though, a cooler fact, those big eyes that it has, they allow the horsefly to see 360 degrees around itself. There is no blindsiding this horsefly. That's why when you go to smack it from behind, it knows you're there, because it can see behind itself. That's wild. I mentioned a minute ago that these horseflies don't have brains like humans, but that doesn't mean they can't be smart. They can't learn. Horseflies will prefer to land on a horse's, a cow's neck, so they can't be swatted away by the tail. They know to land higher up, so there's less of a chance of them getting hit away. Ugh. You guys have encountered horseflies before, right? These things are so annoying. There is no country in the world where you cannot find a horsefly. I don't know if that's true, but the card says around the world. So let's just say if there are horses or cows nearby, horseflies are not too far away. I'm getting annoyed at these things by now. Let's move on to the strange wonders. The strange wonder for today is truly an oddity. Everybody take a look at the shoebill. I'm going to get down for a minute just so you can see it in all its glory. That is a scary bird. So this is a pretty big bird. It can get up to 4 feet long with a 6.5-foot wingspan. And it weighs up to 13 pounds. But birds are light, so 13 pounds and not too much. But good lord, a 4-foot tall bird is terrifying, especially when a meme mugs you like this. So shoebills prefer to do their hunting for prey in shadowy areas with a lot of weeds and water vegetation growing, Like I said, 13 pounds ain't too heavy. But for a bird, that's starting to get to the more hard to manage side. So what the shoebill will do, since it hunts in all these weedy, watery areas anyway, it will distribute its weight on its long toes and just creep on top of the weed so it doesn't sink down into the bottom. And like I said, this is a big bird, so he needs a big meal. So he's going to be looking for lizards or fish that swim in and throughout these weeds, and he's going to dart on them quick as can be. Shoebills can even eat young crocodiles. That is genuinely scary to me. I don't want to know about a bird eating a crocodile. That just does not compute in my head. Now, the shoebill's favorite meal is the lungfish. The lungfish needs to breathe air. So whenever the lungfish comes up and sticks just its mouth outside of the water, the shoebill, because its bill is so big, has plenty of time to dive down, pick this thing up, and swallow it before it could even catch its breath. And unfortunately for the poor shoebill, it's just not a good flyer. It has its perks, its advantages, but everything has a weakness. And the shoebill's is its flying. If it's really gonna pick up and fly, it's gotta wait for a gust of wind to come through to kind of help it get going. It's like pulling the lawnmower string a couple extra times, you know? By the way, it's called a shoebill because I guess the scientist who discovered it thought its bill looked like a shoe. I don't see it. The front part of a shoe. I guess it's kind of a stretch in my mind. I don't really see it. I think you could have called it a lot of other things, like maybe machine gun bill. Have you heard this thing clack its beak together? It sounds like somebody is firing an assault weapon. Listen to this. Don't talk about scary. I do not imagine being alone in the swamps and you just hear that out of nowhere. You're gonna think you are under attack. Ugh. Too scary. I want to move on to the monsters of the mind. Oh, it's not going to get any less scary, is it? I would like to introduce cetus, the sea monster. So cetus only came into existence when Poseidon created him after the gods had been insulted by man. What was this insult, you may ask? Allow me to tell you. Andromeda, daughter of King Cephus, careful, the Cephus and Cetus are both in this story. Daughter of King Cephus and Queen Cassiopeia was the princess of Joppa, talking about Andromeda. Her mother was very boastful and once bragged that Andromeda was more beautiful than any goddess or sea nymph. When Poseidon heard of this insult, he sent the Cetus to destroy the queen's land and people. After consulting with an oracle, the king found out that the only way to stop the Cetus was to sacrifice his daughter to the monster. How sad. So was King Cephus just gonna let his daughter die? Was that how this had to end? No, of course not. A hero came along to save his daughter, and for once, it wasn't Hercules. It was actually Perseus who came along to save Andromeda, and because he did, the king actually allowed Perseus to marry Andromeda as sort of a prize. I guess marrying off your daughter to a great hero is always better than letting her die at the hands of a sea monster. Alright, so cetus in Latin literally means whale, and I know I've already read a part straight from the card. Let me do that again really quick. So it says here on the back of the card, Roman scholars claimed they saw the skeleton of the cetus in Rome. It measured 40 feet long and had vertebrae that were 6 feet around. Modern scholars think the bones were probably the remains of a beached whale. Who knows, right? And I guess that's it. That's the final creature of the day. Whew, we got through today pretty quick, didn't we? Guys, this series means so much to me. I'm not going to end every single Weird and Wild Creatures video with a mini rant about how much I love this series, how much I love that you guys love this series. But I do just want to take a minute and say thank you. Thank you for consistently watching these videos. They consistently get hundreds of views. That makes me so happy. I love these cards, and I love you. If you like this video, why don't you give it a like and subscribe if you have not already. Follow my Instagram and Facebook at Let'sBeFriend2020. I'll update you whenever I'm posting or not posting a video. With all that being said, once again, thank you so very much for watching. And until next time!